Mr. Chairman, my name is Stan Jones. I'm a lawyer with Nelson Mullins Law Firm here in Atlanta. Our firm has the pleasure of representing two programs that are already in service to DJJ, the foster care system for kids in need of services. Youth Villages is a nationally recognized program out of Memphis, Tennessee that owns Inner Harbor Hospital here and runs a program called Intercept. Multi-Agency Alliance for Children is a coalition or nonprofit owned by about 10 of our outstanding child service providers, like Hillside, Devereaux, Macon Behavioral, a group of providers that do out-of-home care for several of the state agencies. I don't want to trivialize the elegant and articulate testimony you've already heard by speaking briefly to a couple of specific points. We vigorously and enthusiastically support the bill, and I think you'll find that the child serving agencies of this state, as their sort of representatives have already said, love the ideas and principles that embody the new bill. But I did want to call brief attention to two items that we've passed out here. The first one, they're both contained in the DJJ section of the bill, and they relate to how evidence-based practices are defined and some comments about which types of professionals that may be employed by the agencies that either the courts or DJJ designate as best practices. On line 7074, where evidence-based programs or practices is defined, it's used as one of the modifiers is that the research that demonstrates the likelihood to prevent or reduce juvenile justice be scientific research. Often that means, particularly more in the medical and science context, a clinical trial, where some kids are receiving the service that's being analyzed and some are not. I think that might be a little bit too narrow for the very good providers you already enjoy in Georgia. So at least I took an initial pass at trying to widen the definition a little bit so that you're not excluding some very good programs that are in Georgia, and that's what that's about. I tried to sort of track the type of phrasing that Just Georgia and Barton Clinic and Judge Boggs have used. When people talk about best practices or proven practices, they mean typically that outcomes can be achieved, that you know what those outcomes are. They're outcomes like keeping a kid in school, keeping him with his parents, not having further involvement with juvenile justice. But not every good program has been through a clinical trial. That's more common in the medical field than it is in the child welfare field. So that's the effort at rewording that I've done here. And then secondly, on page 206, lines, let's see. Line 7147, there's a goal here to be assured that a child that is being helped has staff, providers, and workers who are trained and treated as professionals in 7147. Not all of you have had the pleasure of being involved in a scope of practice discussion within the Health Committee. Some of you have. But I think the word professional sometimes can be tied to specific licenses, like licensed social workers or nurses or marriage and family therapists or licensed professional counselors. At least I believe that the intention here was to try to assure that the staff is trained and that it's treated with professional respect and not denigrated because they're working in a child service agency. And so to avoid some potential trap that a profession can be defined narrowly as a licensed one, my suggestion here was to try to loosen that up a little bit so that programs can be more widely used. One example would be sometimes you have kids who've been in the system who are peers, and they are actually really good coaches for kids because they have sort of been through the issues and have learned how to talk to parents and families better. Another example, some of the programs use college graduates, but they train them themselves. The graduate may not have succeeded in getting a license. Or want to, and may be more effective in some cases because they haven't. So programs have different levels of treatment or coaching that is used, and I think the word professional could be used too narrowly to enable the use of programs that have the best practices and proven outcomes. So thank you very much.
Thank you. We have a question for you. I'd like to recognize Mayor Margaret Oliver.
Thank you for the good work that your folks do in Inner Harbor and other places in Georgia. When evidence-based came up as a definitional section in our discussion, I believe we reminded ourselves that it had been defined in last year's bill. Would you please go back for us sometime and double check and see if it was in fact defined?
I'll be glad to do that. I don't recall. I haven't gotten that far yet.
I don't think we changed it from last year, but if we did, I'd like to know if the differences are as you suggest they might be. And I think you raise a good point, because it's evidence-based practices and contract compliance is a term of art that we're using right now.
Right.
And to the extent there are going to be vendor issues, and to the extent there are going to be bids and audits and things like that, it is giving the best definition possible is something we did discuss.
Thank you.
And no further questions. Thank you very much, sir.